Thursday morning, everybody. It's Matt Scalisi and Ben Flanagan here with another edition of Bammers, but with a little new flavor there in our top title bar. That's right. We are sponsored now, folks. Bammers is brought to you by the good folks at the Mercedes-Benz Tech Program. Learn more about Mercedes-Benz World of Advanced Automotive Technology. Text the word Mercedes to 55678 or visit www.learnmercedes.com. Ben, I just successfully made it through our first ad read on Bammers. So we really are entering a more mature phase of this show, I think, now. And it's an important moment for our show, just like last week, I think was an important moment for the maturity of this Alabama football team, as these guys really got, I think, what is a lesson every class at Alabama ultimately gets under Nick Saban. They made him mad. They had a bad week of practice. He said so all week, and they played a sort of mediocre game against a team, an FCS team that they should have beaten by a lot. And Saban took his opportunity after that game to say, "I told you so," which is, again, a classic Saban, almost trope at this point of the Saban era.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is the best possible outcome from playing a team like Mercer for Alabama, and Nick Saban specifically, using a game like this as a teaching lesson, right? Like, he is a teacher, he is a coach, and he is always looking to glean lessons and coaching opportunities from whatever circumstance his team happens to be in. And so a lot of people ask, why do they play Mercer? Why do they play Chattanooga, Western Carolina, all these teams? And he's been asked that in the past, and he has basically vented about not having enough control over who they play, or people not wanting to play Alabama when they have an opening. So if it happens to be Mercer, the Bears come into town again after losing to Alabama, I think like 60-0 the last time they played in Tuscaloosa. So Mercer gets a lot out of it in terms of the payday, obviously, getting to play in Bryant-Denny Stadium, getting to play a defending national champion team, Nick Saban coach team. So what does Alabama get? Potential injuries. Obviously, Will Anderson gets blocked in the knees, and so he's questionable, according to Saban, after the game. Thankfully, it turns out that he's more day-to-day at this point and has been doing better, and it's not as serious as some people might have thought. But what do you get out of this? So if Mercer is the game where Alabama has to learn these tough lessons, better Mercer than Florida in Florida this weekend. And so Nick Saban can obviously use a game like this where they didn't play up to the standard or practice up to the standard that he had hoped or that they have set for themselves. So again, you want to use a week like this to sort of get your mind right, as Alabama fans like to say, inspired by Saban. So I think it's the best possible outcome for Nick Saban to for his message to be even louder and even clearer for the Alabama team.
For sure. Not the best possible outcome when it comes to injuries, as you mentioned, because Will Anderson did get banged up in this game. It as you said, doesn't look like it's going to be as bad as it initially maybe looked like during the game, which is good news. We don't know if Will Anderson's going to be out there Saturday or not, but he has been practicing this week, which is really good news. So who knows? We'll see how that turns out, and we'll certainly be keeping you guys updated on it. I should say before we continue our discussion, big part of Bammers is getting your comments, as you've seen scrolling in the bottom of the screen here. We love to engage with you guys. We love to put your comments on screen during the show. If you've got comments or questions you want us to react to, throw it up there, whether you're watching it on Facebook or YouTube, and we will address it directly and talk about it. And one of the things that I want to talk about, Ben, you know, when I posted the show today, the prompt that I put in there for everybody is basically, should Alabama be nervous going into this weekend playing Florida, SEC opener for the season? Florida's looked pretty good. I mean, not great, certainly not like last season. They've had some turnover issues. They can't really decide who their starting quarterback is, but it's definitely looking like it's going to be a step up in competition from the first two games for Alabama. But I look out there and I don't see the hype. I don't see the nerves. I don't see Bama fans hyped for this game. And maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, but our colleague John Talty said the same thing when he was on Feinbaum yesterday, basically said, I think Florida's a lot more excited about this game from a fan standpoint. Now, we're not talking about the players. Nick Saban's actually said he's pretty happy with how the team has practiced this week. He thinks they're taking things more seriously. I'm just talking about fans here, okay? What do you get? What sense are you getting, I guess, from the Alabama fan base going into this game? Because to me, Ben, you and I in the mid-2000s, we remember what it was like for Florida Week to be a huge deal. And I don't know that I'm feeling that kind of heat right now.
No, there's certainly not that type of heat. But Alabama fans, I think they're going to win every game. They think they're going to win every game, and they think they're going to lose every game, right?
So, as Samuel Matthews says right here, yeah, complacency.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, like once you start, there's just that overwhelming anxiety that the perfect season might end now, right? And you want another championship every single season, and any game could dash those hopes. So that's just an involuntary anxiety that Alabama fans can't control. Otherwise, I think they're extremely confident going into this game. I think, Alabama certainly respects Florida. They respect the swamp. I mean, it's hard not to. It's one of the most amazing game day atmospheres in sports history, let alone college football history. Alabama has played some amazing games there. I mean, I go back to the 1999 game when Alabama beat Florida 40-39 in overtime. I think I was in like the 8th grade, Matt. I was in Tuscaloosa watching it at a friend's house. Once it was over, we walked to campus and the place was going crazy. There were like frat dudes rolling trees on the quad and people, honking their horns and, hooting and hollering. And so dating all the way back to the SEC championship games that these teams have had, including last year's. I mean, this is a great rivalry. It's one of those great helmet games. It just like the uniforms look good on the field together. And so it'll be fun seeing Alabama back in the swamp. Alabama, obviously, the last time they went to the swamp, it was ugly for Florida. They beat them 38-10.
2011, right?
2011, yes. I'm
10
sorry.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years ago. So it's amazing that it's taken this long for Alabama to get back down there. But it's always incredibly exciting. I think fans look forward to the opportunity to go to Gainesville to set foot in that stadium. It's one of those college football bucket list items, to be sure. So I'm glad some people are going to be able to experience that for the first time this weekend. But as far as the game goes, look, I mean, Alabama's once again a double-digit favorite if you pay attention to that kind of stuff. But Alabama, I think, always has something to worry about because they've always got the bullseye on their back. And Florida is one of these programs who was this close last year. They were in the SEC championship. They ended up going, 8-4, I think, last year in the regular season. But they were 6 points away from tying or beating Alabama in the SEC championship. Yep. They were scoring on a great team almost at will as that game went on, even though they couldn't stop Alabama for anything, which is why Alabama won the game. But Florida was close. And they probably have that chip on their shoulder, even though their quarterback, Kyle Trask, has moved on. He was drafted. They're developing a couple of quarterbacks who are obviously very dangerous and capable of hurting Alabama's defense. So we'll see what happens. But I think Florida is going to be confident. This is going to be a make-or-break game for their season. If they beat Alabama, then their season is alive. Their playoff hopes are alive. If they lose, they might be rebuilding. So it's going to be huge for Florida. So you have to expect that they're going to come in and they're going to give Alabama their best shot.
Scott Kemplin earlier in the comments brought up an interesting point, I think, and I'll pull his comment back up. He brings up the point here that maybe part of the reason Alabama fans aren't more nervous is they've seen this movie before. They know that you can lose a game and still make it into the playoffs, even into the SEC championship. If you're Alabama, based on your reputation, based on your ability to beat everybody else in the league, in the division, there's maybe less urgency, at least from the fan base side, to have to go. It's undefeated or bust, because we've seen it. We've seen scenarios play out multiple times where Alabama won a national championship and didn't have a perfect season, which I think is an interesting point. A couple other folks have brought up the offensive line. Scott Vandiver here says, OL has to play better. We need to be able to run the ball well. I do like how Alabama's running the ball, but I think we've seen some issues with protecting Bryce Young, especially on the right side of that line, is not quite shored up yet. So I think this will be a good test. I don't know that this is the best defensive line that Alabama is going to play this year, but it's definitely a step up from what they just saw. I think the part of this that we haven't really talked very much about is Florida and what they bring to the table. And Anthony Bass mentions Richardson, who is the freshman quarterback at Florida, who's been kind of lighting the world on fire over there and has them in a bit of a quarterback controversy at this point because of how well he's played. Says he's the kind of quarterback that gives us fits over the last decade or so. He's one of those where you can't commit too much to the run or the pass. And that is true. That is the kind of quarterback that can be infuriating to Alabama in the past. Although Bryce Young, as we've talked about on this show, he's kind of become that himself. Alabama has also now become known for these quarterbacks that can beat you running the ball just as easily as throwing. Mac Jones, a notable exception to that rule, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tough because if you're a quarterback who's dangerous, you have to make the throws against Alabama. The offensive coordinator has to create schemes that confuse a very talented secondary and a very talented defense. But if you're the quarterback, you've got to give your athletic receivers an opportunity to beat Alabama's defensive backs one-on-one. We've seen that time and time again with Alabama's amazing secondaries in the past. But I mean, again, you go back to the Johnny Manziel, the kind of quarterback you're talking about, who is capable of beating Alabama and did. I go back to those games where like Mike Evans was beating Alabama's defensive backs one-on-one. You go back to that Clemson game when Trevor Lawrence was just throwing all over Alabama's secondary when their receivers were either wide open because of scheme or because Justin Ross and these other incredibly talented guys were just beating guys one-on-one. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I can't wait to see Alabama's secondary step up because, I mean, they're very experienced. They've been good so far. I've been impressed with the way Alabama has played. They had a couple of breakdowns, obviously, against Mercer last week, but those were communication issues, I think, and I can't wait to see how those work out. Jalen Armour-Davis and Josh Jobe will be back this week. There were backups like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Marcus Banks in for them last week. They got very important reps and experience that are only going to help them for the rest of the season, but to have the secondary full strength this time, DeMarco Hellams obviously being back, it's going to be fun to watch them in action, to be sure. But it's funny with I'm sure Florida fans are probably pretty confident going into this game. It's on their turf.
I think they're excited. Well, I don't know if they're confident or not, but they're definitely hyped.
Who's confident when Alabama comes to town, right? But It's kind of one of those things where it's like the swamp is this dangerous place, but it's one of those things that cliche where it's like Alabama's not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with Alabama,
yes,
right?
Right.
And so when Alabama comes to town, that's often the case. So I can't wait. It's such a great atmosphere, and I always love watching Alabama versus Florida, especially for the past 7 years, I think, in a row now that Alabama has beaten Florida. And how many years in a row now is it that Nick Saban has beaten Dan Mullen? Mullen, who I believe is winless against Nick Saban as a head coach.
Saban is 10-0 versus Dan Mullen.
Yeah, amazing. So Mullen wants to snap that streak.
I'm
sure.
I'm sure he does. I do think sometimes the whole road environment thing gets a little overrated and a little overblown, but I think Florida is one of the places where it's worth taking seriously, and it is a legit factor in the game. I think LSU is another one I would put on the list. I would put Auburn on the list too. Yeah. I think there are some places that when the stadium is fully engaged and when they are all the way hyped up for a game, it's a factor in the other team's head emotionally. And especially if you get behind early, I think it becomes an even bigger factor. So, I think we've seen a little bit of both for this Alabama offense. We've seen them get off to a really good start against Miami, and we saw them last week get off to a really sluggish, ugly start. And I think if you come out and play on the opening two series the way they did against Mercer last week, that Florida Stadium is going to be exploding with noise. It's going to be through the roof, and it's going to be hard to emotionally recover from a start like that. So it can really, even though to us watching these first two games probably didn't feel that much of a difference in the first quarter. If you get off to a slow start versus a quick start in Gainesville, totally different story.
Yeah, kind of what you're describing reminds me of that Ole Miss game, I think from 2018, I believe it was, when Ole Miss came out, first play of the game, threw a bomb touchdown pass, and went up 7-0.
The one in Oxford you're talking about?
Matt Luker just drew it up, fist pumping on the sideline. They go up 7-0. The place is going absolutely insane. And then Alabama went on a 62-0 run to finish the game. So, yeah, hot start. It will only help Florida, but they got to keep it going for 60 minutes, and it's going to be hard to do that against this Alabama team. Very talented, but I think at this point we know Nick Saban's messaging leading up to this game. He said that he was pleased with the way Alabama has been practicing this week as opposed to last week, and that's a good sign. If Nick Saban is high on the way that you're practicing leading up to a big game like this, that's obviously a good sign, but it's also something that could have a double meaning, right? We talked about what Saban is trying to communicate with what he's saying in his press conferences, and maybe him being very positive about the team and affirming means that he needs to get their heads right going into this game. And I'm pleased with the effort so far. So maybe that'll help them think that it's been a good week of practice leading up to what will be a good opponent, and I believe a top 10 opponent. Matt,
let's see. I'm actually not sure where Florida football is ranked in the two polls at this.
You're disrespecting the opponent, Matt. Disrespecting the opponent.
They're ranked 11th currently in the AP poll, but close. Look, I mean, it's definitely one of the more highly ranked games in college football this weekend. Scott Vanver had a question for us specifically about last week. Asked if we were surprised that they didn't throw to the tight end against Mercer. I will say this: I think probably that's the kind of game where I'm not saying that you're holding back or whatever, but I think when you can play a vanilla offensive playbook and still win easily, I think you do that, especially early in the season. We've seen that Latu is a threat. I believe they actually did throw to him at some point, although it was not a completion in the game. But I think you have to be careful about overdoing it in any one direction in terms of showing your hand and showing what your strengths are offensively, because for the most part, opponents still don't really know what Bill O'Brien's proclivities are with this offense. They don't know what he likes to call in certain situations yet, and that's an advantage to Alabama as long as that's still the case. I would not surprise me at all if Latu or even Billingsley are more involved in the game plan going forward for the rest of the season, especially this week, because they're gonna need more options out there throwing the ball, because Florida's the one thing we do know about Florida's defense is very, very aggressive. We know they played that way against Alabama last year. They don't mind getting burned a few times during this game. They want to get in your head. They want to rough you up. They want big plays that change the momentum of the game. If they get burned a few times for touchdowns, you were probably going to score on them anyway. But they like to play a much more aggressive style defensively, and I think you're going to need to have Bryce Young given as many options as possible out there when the pressure is coming at him.
He's got him though, Matt. I mean, like if you're just looking at last week's receiving stats, I mean, I think 5 different receivers caught passes. You had 2 running backs, I think, Brian Robinson and Jason McClellan caught passes, but getting a lot of people involved. I mean, JoJo Earl, obviously a true freshman that they have a lot of belief in, 7 catches in that game. So they want to get him involved in the offense and get him more experience going into this environment like a swamp and just SEC play in general. So a little surprised, I guess, that a tight end didn't catch the ball in that game, but I think you kind of get what you get what you can get against a team like Mercer and move on. So yeah, whether they were holding back, who really knows, right? But he threw the ball. Bryce Young threw the ball 27 times, 31 overall between the 3 quarterbacks who got in the game. So it's exciting to see them spread the love around to all those different receivers and see what they can do. Trayshawn Holden, another guy who obviously is very talented. I think A.G. Hall even had a catch that they called back. It was a touchdown catch that they called back at some point. So really 6 receivers who got involved. So Alabama has a lot of options, including those tight ends. I have to think that they're going to get involved this weekend.
And we did, just as another quick note, we did finally get to see JoJo Earle in the return game. So after not seeing him out there for the opening week, it looks like they're starting to sort of gradually work him in. He could be a factor, obviously, in this game as well. So it will be interesting to see what he looks like out there. Then there's been another topic come out regarding Alabama football this week. It hasn't been all talk about the game, about this week's game or last week's game. There's been another topic that sort of has taken control of the social media sphere when it comes to Nick Saban and Alabama football. And before we dive into it ourselves, I want to show a little presentation that I think will introduce us to the topic.
101 D's Nuts Jokes by Nick Saban. The college football coach himself says can't touch D's nuts. Nick Saban's 101 D's Nuts Jokes. Order your copy today.
20 monthly payments of $59.95.
So the comments have gone silent. I just want to applaud Ben real quickly for putting that together. Really some amazing work there. Only the highest quality video production from us here on Bammers. But Ben, we learned from safety Jordan Battle this week, that Nick Saban has a strange sense of humor. Scott rightly pointing out, I don't think we'll see Battle in front of the podium again for a while. Yeah, so we've known this about Nick Saban before. It has come up. Josh Jacobs has talked about it before. Some other players have confirmed it. But Nick Saban has apparently a very specific sense of humor. Some would call it sort of a juvenile sense of humor, a youthful sense of humor maybe. And it's he likes the D's genre of jokes.
Who doesn't, Matt? Really? Who doesn't?
I certainly liked it back in middle school.
Right.
But it's just really funny to imagine this, like, the most serious, intimidating guy that you could possibly imagine being around. And he from what we hear from players, he'll come up behind you at practice and drop one of these jokes on you. And is apparently hugely amused by this. He thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. I have it on good authority that actually when Saban found out what Jordan Battle said at the press conference this week, that Saban actually thought it was really funny and was very amused that it was brought up again. So I mean, I don't think it's something he's sensitive about or embarrassed about. I think he loves that this is like his one way to make people laugh, as a guy who's usually makes people probably nervous and uptight around him. This is the thing he can do to break the tension. It seems like Lane Kiffin appreciated it about Saban as well. He was talking about it this week. But, just a strange little piece to add to the Saban legacy.
Wait, his one way of doing it? Like, so this is all he's got? Like,
I don't know. I never heard of any other jokes that he tells.
Well, look, with Jordan Battle, talented player, there are ways of sharing this, right? Like, there are ways to have shared.
You have to set it up.
Jokes. These are the jokes that Nick Saban tells, but
yeah.
Hey, Jordan went all in, and now the world knows, right? And the world is better off, I guess, but it's very Michael Scott of Nick Saban, right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Because the story goes at this point. So we first heard that Nick Saban liked these jokes a couple of years ago when Josh Jacobs, I think, told the Dan Patrick Show that he makes these jokes. And then a reporter, one of our reporters, asked Jordan Battle at this press conference, what are some ways that Nick Saban, I guess, kind of makes you laugh, jokes around with you? And we got his answer. But then we also learned that former Alabama player, current Baltimore Raven All-Pro Marlon Humphrey is the one who introduced the D's concept to Nick Saban. And to me, it's very Michael Scott, because it's like somebody shows you something funny,
Yes.
and then you reach and grab it and try to take ownership of it just because you thought it was funny. And it just makes me like, I just wonder now, like, what else could people drop on Nick Saban that he would incorporate into his, arsenal of jokes, so to speak. So yeah, a little surprising that it's from this guy who's won 7 national championships, distinguished coach, considered probably the best of all time, one of the greatest in sports history. He likes D's jokes, Matt.
Yeah, maybe we'll see him. Maybe we'll see him branch out into some sort of alternate approaches to this genre of joke. We'll see him throw in a Bofa maybe occasionally, time to time. I don't know.
He's going to get a TikTok soon. Nick Saban's going to have a TikTok soon, and millions of followers, and God knows what'll happen.
There's footage of it out. I mean, of all the times they've mic'd him up at practice for any of these sort of documentaries and TV specials, there's footage of it out there somewhere of him pulling off one of these jokes. Or as Anthony Bass says, one of D's jokes.
So, thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, yeah, fun to get some levity added in this week. We'll see if everybody's still feeling happy and still feeling like making jokes a week from now after Alabama has played Florida and opened SEC play. We will have, obviously, tons of coverage for you from Gainesville of this game. We've got our staff going down there. We've got our great video team will be represented down there. And we'll have a pre- and post-game show with myself and Simone Eli right here wherever you're watching this on Saturday. So tune in for that as well. Just want to bring up one more time our sponsor of the show. Hope they're still happy after our third topic today. But our show today and for the rest of the season is presented by Mercedes-Benz Tech Program. Learn more about Mercedes-Benz World of Advanced Automotive Technology by texting the word Mercedes to 55678 or visit learnmercedes.com. Ben, thank you for joining me as always. And we've got a podcast season coming soon from Bammers as well that's also sponsored by the Mercedes Tech Program.
Yep, coming soon. Brand new episodes of Bammers. Check it out. You can hear the 20 episodes of this show already now wherever you get your podcasts. So go check them out. The trailer for the new season is also on the feed. So enjoy. And I challenge Alabama reporters out there. Once the Florida game is over, win or lose, the game will be in the past. Ask Nick Saban about these jokes. I think now's the time for him to address this. So I challenge y'all to ask him about
immediately in the post-game press conference, he needs to be asked about it.
We want to hear from Nick Saban about this. This is the thing people care about most this week, and it's going to be your opportunity to ask him the question. So use your time wisely.
Anthony Bass. I shouldn't have even brought this up onto the screen, but I'm doing it. All right, everybody have a good time this weekend. Enjoy the game. Enjoy all the football. And we'll see you guys next week on